to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of New Tales from the Borderlands. I played it on the PS5, it's also available on the PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series, PC, and Nintendo Switch. So we'll start with the story. You play as three characters, Anu, Octavio, and Fran. Anu is a scientist, Octavio is a hustler, and Fran is the owner of a Frogurt shop. Through a series of events, they wind up with a crystal that can, well, heal people, and they decide to try and profit off of it. But of course it can't be that simple. Things have to get way crazier and way more complicated because that crystal came from a vault. And really the story kind of addresses, can they become friends? Can they become better people? Can they grow as human beings? And honestly, the story is perfectly okay. I didn't fall in love with it, and I struggled to fall in love with the characters. They did get better as time went on. It just took a little too long for them to become, tolerable characters. There's also some decent humor in the game. There were definitely moments that made me laugh, but I don't think the humor is as good as it was when Telltale was developing the series. Or even as good as, the actual Borderlands games. Now let's get into the audio, and the first thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is very well done. I think all the actors do a great job capturing their characters. As for the sound effects, I think they work well. I don't really have any complaints there. And the music, I don't love the regular songs, but the actual soundtrack, the background music, I think is very good and works very well. Now as for the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, this is an interactive narrative. You get your dialogue choices, you get your QTEs, you get a little bit of exploration, and of course your dialogue options and QTE success, they affect the story as it goes along. And like I said, in the story part, one of your goals is to build up their friendship, and you do that through the dialogue choices. Now, this not being developed by Telltale actually kind of did the game a slight favor, and that is that this game ran more smoothly than a lot of the Telltale games. I definitely had issues with The Wolf Among Us as well as the original Tales from the Borderlands when it was being developed by Telltale. This runs far smoother than that did, and I'm very happy about that. One thing I did love absolutely is the Vaultlanders edition. It's just a kind of ridiculous gameplay element, and it really, I think it's more of a side thing than anything. Vaultlanders are collectibles in the game. They're little action figures essentially, and you can do combat with them. And the combat is just kind of silly and entertaining and quite frankly easy, but the character you do it against is just kind of there, and he's one of the funnier ones. And it's just a silly addition to the game, but it kind of works in the goofiness that was established in the first game, honestly. It's this game's equivalent of the finger guns. Now, as for the controls are very simple. It's, like I said, QTEs and, basic button prompts and movement. I think it works very well, though. I never had any problems with the controls not doing what I wanted. I never felt like I hit the button prompts and it screwed me over. Now, the graphics and visuals, and once again, this continues the Borderlands tradition of being a cel-shaded game. I mean, it really wouldn't be Borderlands at this point if they went for the hyper-realism, which is kind of funny because the original Borderlands trailer was hyper-realistic. But here we are, Promethea. It fits the Borderlands aesthetic of a large city. You of course have psychos because they are across the galaxy, and they look like you would expect them to. They fit. The enemies in general in this game fit, which is mostly one of the big evil corporations. But going beyond that, the characters all fit in the world. Anu looks like she would be a scientist in this world, just kind of out of place, yet still a scientist. Octavio looks kind of like what you would expect a hustler to look like in this world. And well, Fran has this funny kind of retro vibe to her, which, again, it works. Just like any other Borderlands game, it's bright, it's colorful, and the animation is very well done. There's nothing about it that doesn't fit in the Borderlands universe. I think they just did a really good job with all of that. They captured that art style and they just made it look good. All the interface stuff in the game looks very good. It works very well. It's noticeable when the QTEs pop up, which from a visual standpoint, when you're talking about a game like this, that is very important. And I guess the last thing I am going to say, and it is kind of a complaint in I don't know what department, but there are times in this game where it feels like there's dialogue and just something missing, because you'll have a character respond to another character, but not to what they had just said. It's just out of place. It feels like there's a line that's missing and it just doesn't line up, and it throws you off because it happens a few times and it's confusing. So overall, to wrap this up, we all already know that I love interactive narratives, but I gotta say, I didn't necessarily love this. It was totally adequate. The story and characters didn't pull me in. I don't think the writing is as good as it was under Telltale, so this being a sequel, it feels like it's not as good. And while technically it runs far superior to the first game, you're in it for the story, and I just wasn't as into it. I wasn't as into the characters, I wasn't as into the story as a whole, the game as a whole. So honestly, unless you're like a really die-hard Borderlands fan, or you're really hard up for an interactive narrative, your life is complete without this game, unfortunately. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me who is your favorite main character from a Borderlands game? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.